Namic, Virginia members, corporate sponsors, and our supporters. We are so happy to have you join us today for the panel discussion, Salute to Our Veterans, You Matter. To the veterans in the world and on this call, thank you for your service. Namic, Virginia is honored to partner with the Cox Communications Virginia Salute Employee Resource Group. Now more than ever, support is a core responsibility for all of us, and the Virginia Salute ERG has risen to the occasion and are fulfilling their mission to be a support to its military veteran members. Such examples of their support include partnering in the community with the Hampton VA Medical Center, Good Mojo Thrift Store, and most recently, the Honor Foundation, helping prepare veterans transitioning to civilian life. We are also excited to have individuals from our communities in Hampton Roads to share their experiences, resources, and ways to get involved and support veterans. According to the US Census Bureau, as of 2018, there are approximately 18 million veterans in the United States. About 1.7 million of those veterans are women. Veterans often have the highest levels of education, and post 9/11, veterans had a 43% chance of having a service-connected disability. Get ready for a discussion that will be informative and engaging. I will now turn it over to Tanya Wiley, Executive Sponsor for the Cox Communications Virginia Salute ERG, to introduce our panelists and moderator. Tanya, take it away.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Lakeisha, for the introduction. So as Lakeisha mentioned, I am the executive sponsor of Virginia's Veterans Employee Resource Group, also known as Salute ERG. I am extremely honored and proud to introduce the esteemed moderator, as well as our distinguished panelists. And as I read through these ultra impressive bios, a few qualities stuck out for me. First, servant leadership, humility, resiliency, mental fortitude, commitment, critical thinking, and integrity. And I don't know about you, but I cannot think of any other attributes I would want in the trenches with me than these. So first up, JD Myers, my fabulous boss, Senior Vice President and Region Manager of this lovely Virginia region. And a little bit about what I call my JD. JD is a telecommunication industry leader with more than 30 years experience in operations, marketing, and sales, who joined Cox in 2006. JD leads our Virginia and North Carolina regions, encompassing over 2,400 employees across 4 markets. JD has an extensive list of honors, and I will only name a few because we'd be here until tomorrow if I named them all. JD was recently named in the top 2020 top 100 people to meet in Virginia, named to the 2020 Inside Business Power List, is among Cablefax's most influential minorities in cable for 4 years, and he has reaffirmed his commitment to diversity by serving as the executive sponsor for the Virginia chapter of the National Association for Multi-Ethnicity and Communications, also known as Namic. In terms of his military service, JD served 6 years, 8 months, 3 days, and 2.5 hours. So how's that for precision? He is personally committed to helping veterans navigate life and career changes from military service to civilian service. So welcome, JD, and thank you. On to our panelists. We have Marsha Kentish. Marsha immigrated to the US from Panama at the age of 19. And soon after her arrival, she joined the US Navy. Marsha Kentish is a registered nurse with 23 years of clinical experience in diverse settings ranging from oncology, internal medicine, labor and delivery, home health, case management, health and wellness, clinical nutrition, and most recently, cannabis consultant. Marsha also works with senior citizens, the disabled, and those with chronic conditions who desire to use food as medicine and other alternative and complementary modalities to achieve optimal health. So welcome, Marsha, as well. Next on to Robert Ashurst. Robert joined Cox Communications in 2001, and his current role is Access Engineer 2 with Cox Business. He served 10 years in the United States Navy as a data system technician and recently joined the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary in 2019, where he currently serves as a flotilla staff officer for vessel exams. Robert has completed over 250 hours of voluntary work for the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary. Thank you, Robert, and welcome. Next, we have our very dear friend, Mr. Charles Davis, who is currently serving as Field Operations Director for Cox Communications in Atlanta, Georgia. In this role, Charles is responsible for all aspects of field operations, employee experience, and safety for the residential, commercial, and outside plant teams. Charles joined Cox in 1997 as a field technician in Orange County over in California. Charles has served in a number of field service positions throughout the last 20 years, spanning several regions to include our very own Virginia region here, Northeast, and the Southeast region. Prior to joining Cox, Charles served our country as a United States Marine, earning an honorable discharge in 1997. Charles was also recognized by the Secretary of Navy for superior performance. Last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Antoine Hines, who had a very, very long list of accolades, so I will do my best to summarize a few. Antoine considered himself a veteran before swearing an oath to serve in the United States Navy. And growing up in Brooklyn, New York, Antoine identified early on the pressures of gangs, drugs, and violence would lead to a destructive and unfulfilling end. And with that in mind, in 1999, Antoine chose a different path for his life and enlisted in the Navy after receiving his first bachelor degree of 3 from an HBCU. As a health promotions commissioner and officer at the end of his career in the Navy, he also received an additional bachelor's degree in nuclear technology. He also ran 2 Biggest Loser challenges, managed a fitness center, and taught health, fitness, and wellness classes at Norfolk based to military and civilians. So I'm wondering when Mr. Antoine got time to rest. Antoine is recognized as a strategic advisor on the issues of homelessness, community engagement, and Black community wealth building. He is also an advisory board member for the Virginia Housing and Community Development Corporation and a member of the NAACP. Welcome, 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 Antoine. And before I hand it off to JD, I would be remiss if I didn't thank you all for serving and being on the front, serving our country. I'm 2 days early with this, but happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans. And with that, I will now pass it on to Mr. JD Myers.
Lakeisha, Tanya, thank you for those phenomenal introductions. I say we just don't do the panel. We let you two do the introductions again. They felt so good. You guys did such a great job. So thank you so very much. But I have such a distinguished panel here, and I just can't wait to dig in and start asking them some questions. But I need to remind all of you, and Tanya alluded to it, Lakeisha did too. Being in the military is an honor. It's a choice. It's a privilege of a select few. So I also want to personally thank each and every one of you for your service from one veteran to another. An early happy Veterans Day. All right. So with that being said, if you're like me, your family tends to spend time with you, asking you questions about how you serve the country. So if you think about that, I want you to think about and process. I'm gonna ask this question to all of you. What has been the most difficult thing for you to communicate to your family, to your friends, or even to your employer about your military service? So who wants to lean in and start first?
Well, no volunteers.
Awesome. Thank you for stepping in.
Well, for me, I would say it's a sacrifice. When I say sacrifice, I don't mean like, sticking my life on the line. It's more like the birthdays that I've missed, the anniversaries. I mean, I have family members, to be honest with you, they were babies when I enlisted, and I mean, they don't even know who I am. So, that's what I mean. And a lot of people, they have a hard time understanding it because it doesn't convey real easy.
That's a great one. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I'll go next.
Marsha, go right ahead.
As far as my family is concerned, that wasn't really difficult for me because fortunately, several of my family members served in the military. My dad, my cousins, my siblings. What was most difficult for me was communicating that to my friends. mind you, I came to the US. So I was born and raised in a whole different country. So my friends could not understand why in heaven would you leave your country to come to the US to serve the US. They just could not comprehend that. My best friend, actually, I was stationed on board the ship. My daughter was 2 years old, and it was at the end of the first Iraq war, and we had to deploy, and she just could not comprehend how a mom could dare leave her 2-year-old behind. And that was so hurtful and so painful. But you know what? I would never, I would do it all over again. I would do it all over again because America has done so much, not only for myself, but for my husband and my entire family. So it was an honor serving. People wouldn't understand it at all, but it was definitely an honor. I'm not going to say it was easy, but definitely an honor.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I think probably the most challenging thing about telling my family and friends that I was going in the military is probably that I was going to be a Marine. I think there's that stigma that Marines aren't well, are kind of crazy. And my father was a Marine, and at the time I was in college, and so it was a big disappointment to my parents that I decided to leave college and join the military. And so I think, saying that I was going to leave college and pursue a career in the Marine Corps was probably the most challenging item that there was. But, just understanding where I was at that point in my life, understanding that I needed more direction and guidance, and something that my father had done. And, in our communities, we don't get a lot of opportunities to do things that our parents had done. And so it was kind of I guess, a wish of mine to follow in my father's footsteps, who had enlisted in the Marine Corps in the early 1960s and had served in the Vietnam War. And so I think that was probably the most challenging, and just the fear of actually going to war. The Marines are considered the president's own. And so they deploy all over the world, being the first unit there, first to fight. And so I wanted to make sure that I selected a career in the Marine Corps that would enable me, one, to be safe, and not put me in harm's way, but it was an honor to serve as a Marine. So that was probably the most challenging, is telling my family I was going to stop going to college and become a United States Marine.
Awesome. Thank you, Charles.
Now I'm into, yeah. So with me, it was challenging here, not because of joining the military, because my uncle was in the military for 28 years. My brother came behind me, 6 months behind me. My cousin also joined, but it was the point of the job itself, knowing that in the military you have different jobs. So I was on a submarine, a nuclear submarine. So definitely that is a whole nother society and a different mindset to go underneath water for months at a time, protecting your country and looking at other countries just in case something happens, that you have the ability to push a button and take the life of other people. And just those understandings in what you're doing, it became more that I couldn't really explain that, and they couldn't really understand that and why I was serving in this manner to protect my country and to fight for them back home, to understand that my daughter, I want her to grow up in a safe country, in a free country, and to know that that was what I was doing it for.
Awesome. Thank you, Antoine. If you kind of look at this, all of you had some level of similarities, and all of that started with the common theme of leaving and the separation and going away from your families. You all had a common thread there between everything you said, even though there were some unique differences. You all had a common thread. And Charles, I have a common thread with you because I also followed my father's footsteps in the military, who also served in Vietnam twice. So I understand that. That's truly a common thread. So it's pretty cool. So let's transition a little bit. So when you think about it, like when you start with a new company, or if you're in a company like Cox, who is going through what we call open enrollment, at some point, there's going to be a question by that company regarding your service. And through my own experiences, I can tell you that a lot of people that I've spoken to prefer not to self-identify their military history. Now think about that. So they decide not to self-identify. And I know they have their own reasons. What I'd love to hear is, what are your thoughts on self-identification as a veteran, as you come into a company or sharing it with your company? So we can start out. Antoine, since you're on my screen, I'm going to start out with you.
No problem. So definitely I had to downplay my resume, many times. I joined the military as a nuclear electrician to go on submarines. So I was really smart. I was, the top of my classes and stuff. And it became hard on the outside because I could get a six-figure job at a nuclear plant anywhere. But for me and many others, you join a lot of different things. I got enlistment bonuses. I was able to get $20,000, $40,000 in the military. Didn't know how to save it, and it didn't teach me that. But it was the point of that jobs wanted me in that field, but that wasn't really what I resonate with on the outside. I really wanted to help more people. I really wanted to connect more people, and that was not me on the nuclear field. I take those trainings and those expertise to apply to other arenas in my life, but as soon as I put my stuff on LinkedIn, everybody's hitting me up and everything, but that's not the job. That's not me. And I'm trying to get to know who I am as a person, not just my military background.
Thanks, Antoine. You kind of hit on a common thread that a lot of people talk about that I've heard about is you have to downplay your resume. We talk about it all the time. In the military, you're typically an A player. Almost everybody coming out of the military is an A player, but you got to come in at a B level or a C level to fit in. And that's not being egotistical. It is what it is. It's the skill sets that you come in with. So I respect that, and I respect the way that you've managed that. So Bob, you're next on my screen up there, Bob. So can I ask you the same question?
For me, I guess it was more of humility. My grandparents raised me, so my background's a little bit different than most people. So, I come from a background where tooting your own horn is not something you normally do. So for me, I really, be honest with you, I didn't identify until one day I was talking to Julie Otis, and we got into a discussion about it. And she was telling me the benefits that Cox receives as far as contracts wise. And I was like, well, okay, now that you've brought that up, I'll button on the the web page. But there were people who knew that I was in just because, I don't know. I've had people, they can tell by your walk. So, when they bring it up, I was like, yeah, I served, and, I did it from this time to this time. But, I guess for me, it was more just humility thing.
I understand that. Humility makes a whole lot of sense, and that's very common, very common. All right, so Marsha, I see you up there. What's your thoughts, Marsha?
Interestingly, my experience has been the complete opposite of everyone. I brag on the fact that I was in the military and that I'm a veteran. So after retiring from the military, my first job, actually, I went to work for a fellow nurse. We trained together, we were stationed together. So for her, and well, for me as well, it was very welcoming because she knew exactly the training that I had as a nurse and what I was perfectly capable of doing. So she entrusted me because she was stationed in Bethesda at the time, and she had started a home health company here in Virginia. So she trusted that I was able to go out and really take care of her patients. So for me, that experience was completely different in that it benefited me to identify as a veteran.
Great, thank you. And I think most people, and I think to your point, I think a lot of times it's the skill set that you're in. Sometimes dictates how much you articulate what you've done and what your past was and what you're bringing to the table. And a lot of times it's where you're coming in. If you think you're coming into the role and you're at a lot higher level than the people that you're interviewing with are going to work with, you may be a lot more humble and maybe a lot more concerned about holding those things close to the vest. So I can see both perspectives. That's a very phenomenal view that you kind of shared with us, Marsha. So Charles, can you put a bow on this for us?
Yeah, I'm like Marsha. Anybody who knows me knows I'm proud to be a United States Marine and served. I think I was very fortunate. I've only had probably 2 jobs since leaving college, the Marine Corps and Cox. And I got my job at Cox because I was a Marine. Getting out of the Marine Corps in Southern California and San Diego, one of the largest military counties in our country, there's a lot of veterans. And so there's that connection and bond. I got my job at Cox because I was a Marine and I knew a former Marine who had worked at Cox. And so when I came at Cox, it was really just a continuation of really what I had to kind of establish in the Marine Corps, but kind of on the civilian side. And so I'm sure as in the Virginia region, as in California, Southern California, it's just a lot of veterans and a lot of individuals that are proud customers that we service are veterans. And so it's just probably really natural in the community. So, identifying as a veteran is something that I'm very proud of. It's the one commonality that I feel it makes me an American serving my country. And, in my experience, it's probably been a pretty safe space that no matter where I'm at, no matter what environment I'm in, people respect me for my service. And so absolutely proud. And I think it's important, especially in our field regions. It's not as important here in Atlanta. And we're trying to make sure in Atlanta that we get people to self-identify just to really to kind of build relationships with those individuals, help them transition, as we're all a part of Salute. It's a great organization to be a part of and really talk about our service and how we can help each other in the civilian sector.
Awesome. Thank you. Charles, I know there's a reason I brought you for last. It just put a bow and helped me transition to my next question. So thank you so very much. And by the way, I love when people say San Diego is one of the largest facilities, and I like to hear that too, but it's not larger than Virginia. And I always say that. So I'm glad you brought that up. But you've been in both markets. So you've been in both locations. So you have no biases. But I have biases. And I have a bias about a couple things. First and foremost, I have a bias that I think veterans by far make the best, if not the brightest, most talented, loyal, self-motivated, driven, disciplined employees on the face of the earth. I have that bias, but I also have it as fact. It's a true statement. So with that being said, Bob, I'm going to ask you a question about transferable skills from the military. Can you talk about the skills that a veteran brings to an organization that may not translate on paper and people may not see, like some of the things I talked about discipline, driven, and self-motivated and loyal, but it's a skill set that would be super valuable for an organization. So Bob, can you share that with us?
Well, the skill sets are just off the charts. I mean, a lot of people don't realize, I was a sailor, but we have CPR training, damage control training, as the list goes on. And sometimes some of that stuff, I'll give you an example. My brother's a missile tech, and I remember when he was doing his resume, I sat down and read it, and I was like, Ron, I was like, you need to take the boots off of this thing. I'm like, half the stuff doesn't translate into the civilian world. So I sat down with him as best as I could to sit there and help him translate some of that. But some of the other skill sets, I'm going to use a Latin terms, ordo ab caos, order out of chaos. I mean, you want to see some military, when there's a crisis situation, watch the military side of me kick in. And I'll probably say that about anybody else that's here. We definitely bring the order into the chaos. So, some of that stuff doesn't translate well. Some people can see that as a negative side too.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob. And I agree with you. Some of those key things you pointed out, damage control, crisis management is huge. Absolutely, crisis management is huge. I think we just, as a group, we need to help educate people who are transitioning, just like you did with your brother, Bob, how to put that stuff on paper so it shows up, because there's a lot of intangible soft skills that are trained that are part of core skills of people in the military that aren't core skills of people in the civilian world, and we've got to figure out how to help them get that on paper. So that's phenomenal. Thank you for that. So Charles, I'm going to come back to you for a second. So help me with a question regarding the transition of active service into the workplace. So, for some veterans, this is probably one of the most difficult things they do is making that transition. But Charles, if you look at your career success, you successfully transitioned straight from the military. You said you've only had 2 jobs, the military and Cox. So you made that transition and you made it very, very well. So what skill sets do you think that you brought to the table that made you make that transition so successfully and so easily?
Yeah, I think most importantly, JD, I think that the skill sets that I brought to the table, it's just some of the fundamentals of just being in the Marine Corps, being in the military. Is one, being on time, being punctual, being a team player. Those things, we take those for granted in our civilian, in our military lives. But in the civilian world, that's really what sets folks apart, is really being a team player, being an individual who can follow instructions, creating an environment where their leader can come and speak to them and talk to them about opportunities of how they can better themselves, better their organization. I think it's important to be able to be a follower, so to speak. And then, I think that the item that's really I think where the military really helps a lot of us, especially those of us who were able to spend more than 4 or 6 years in the military is really that leadership component. Leadership skills, teaching you how to, one, lead by example, to make sure that you're communicating effectively, understanding what it is that you want to accomplish in your organization, and being able to translate that to your team or to your department, or what area of the business that you get the opportunity to participate in. So I would just say, from my opinion, the biggest item is really just around that whole teamwork aspect. One, being a team member, and then two, transition to lead the team. And that's something that we all get in the military. The longer our careers progress, as we get opportunity, one, be a part of a team when we join, and if you stay in long enough, get a chance to lead a team.
Absolutely. Punctuality, being to work on time is huge. I'd say a lot of employees lose their job in the first 12 months because they can't come to work on time. So that's a big one. But that teamwork, that collaboration, that's transferable in any company you're in. And the fact that you can follow and you can lead, that's another skill set that's very transferable that's not talked about a lot. So Charles, you brought up some great points. Thank you for that. So Marsha, everybody needs assistance from time to time in our lives, and veterans are no exception. Whether you have been, recently deployed or you've been home for 10 years, there's got to be many resources out there available to can help a veteran, specifically in their time of need. Can you share some of those resources that your organization or the Department of Veteran Affairs may have available for veterans?
Absolutely. So first, I'll address my organization. I have a nonprofit, Beacon of Hope, and it is my goal through my organization to offer nutrition consultation, wellness programs, as well as cannabis consultation for veterans. And I want to bring that to the community by offering cooking classes and cooking demos and maybe grocery store shopping to really teach veterans, how can I better manage my disease? It doesn't have to be popping a pill bottle. It's amazing to see what spices and herbs and the right food combination can really do for health. And when you go to the docs, they will say, well, I want you to change your diet, I want you to do this, but there are no specifics. And what I want to do is just teach them, get hands-on, show them how you can cook delicious food and still using that as medicine, as your health. Now, as far as the community is concerned, the VA has gotten a bad rap, and perhaps rightfully so, but I would have to say that they have changed and they are working really hard to fulfill the needs of the veterans. There's several organizations in our area, and that includes the VRE, the AMVET, VSO, the CBOT clinics, and I think recently we have one in Virginia Beach and one in Chesapeake. So the VA is really working hard to making sure that those resources are right within our community, as well as the DAV and the United Way. Now, I'm going to take that a step further. One thing I would like to do actually is to encourage veterans to really establish a relationship with their counselor. And that was my saving grace. I went in there humble. I knew I needed assistance. My goal was to apply for the vote rehab program. I really established that good communication with my counselor, and he was tremendous. And I received all the assistance that I went to the VA for and more. And I believe that communication is a great part. Sometimes I think veterans, because of the bad rap that the VA has received, we went in with a preconceived notion that I am not going to get any assistance. And you go with a standoff attitude, and that's not going to get you anywhere. But I'm just here to say I am a witness that the system does work. Sometimes we need to circumvent the system. The resources are out there. The VA does have a great women's health program. They're very supportive, and just tap into it. And again, if you have any issues, find another vet that's out there like Antoine, who can connect you to great resources within the community. And that is something that I am aspiring to also be able to do for the vets in the health and wellness arena.
Marsha, thank you so very much. So you slipped in an infomercial on me. I didn't see that coming, but you got that. You slipped that in, and I'm gonna go ahead and give you the shout out. The Beacon of Hope is her nonprofit, focuses on life skill from a health perspective. So I gave you that shout out, but you slipped it in there on me. And you gave Antoine a shout out too. I saw that. You gave him a little shout out, so I love that. But I will say the VA has gotten a bad rap on some things, and it has got some things have been justified as it relates to healthcare, but they definitely have gotten a bad rap on a universal bad rap when it really shouldn't be that. There's just some things they had to focus on that they've made some great steps forward that may not be buttoned up yet, but they've made progress. But they definitely have gotten a bad rap there. So with that being said, I'm going to transition to Antoine. That since you gave him that shout out, so Antoine, we're going to talk about something that's even near and dear to my heart, and it's about homelessness. And someone who has been homeless in their life, I understand this. And homelessness is a big concern for veterans. And if you think about the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, they stated in 2017 that the annual homeless annual report sent to Congress by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development reported that a little over 40,000 veterans were experiencing homelessness. That's just stunning to me. And they described homelessness as anybody living on the street, in a shelter, temporary safe house, or a place unfit to reside in. And 91% of them were men, 9% were women. It's just touching to me, and we got to figure out how to get to that and solve for that. And so, Antoine, my question to you is, can you help us understand why these numbers are so high first? And then how can people support organizations like the Veterans Home Front, which focuses on bringing resources for most at-risk veterans? So what can we do, Antoine?
Okay. So definitely, as you mentioned, the high numbers and why it's so high. And and I'm not only speaking from the experience of working with homeless organizations across Hampton Roads and seven cities, as well as ones inside other states across the U.S. And programs, but I'm speaking from experience. So I spent a year sleeping on my sister's couch. I spent 6 months sleeping in my car. There are many reasons. I mean, from me being a father at that point in time and wanting to stay with my daughter, from me not being able to transition with the right connections into the community, from me not being able to translate my nuclear engineering degree and my background into a job on the outside, to the other point of me having such a high job level in the military. Whichever job I went to, I was at wanting to work harder than everyone else, which hurt everyone else in that realm. So there are many aspects of that, and I think the whole point. I think sometimes the community and a lot of businesses and organizations in the world focus on employment for veterans off the back in employment, but they fail to realize our marital status, our spiritual thing, our personal life, mentally, how we feeling and how we transitioning. I put it in three different aspects of what people in the community can do and what we as can do in the community as veterans. Transition, connection, and sustainability. So in the military in transition, we're trying to do as much as possible. The military is trying to do as much as possible to provide the information and everything out there, but we're not getting a lot of things from the outside while we're in to connect us when we get out. We're not understanding how it's going to be when we don't have dedicated housing and a dedicated pay, dedicated people to take care of me, dedicated meal on a regular basis. That's that transition. Connection, while we're in the transition, the connection to the family programs or the nonprofits on the outside. We need more connections. I didn't have those connections on the outside. I was lost when I got on the outside. Many of the veterans, or even just the homeless individuals that I talked to on the streets, didn't know what was available to them. I had a World War II veteran out there sleeping in his car. Oh, didn't know that he can get disability. Didn't know about the different programs. So we need to really push those connections, and those connections come from military individuals right here, our veterans. That's where peer support comes into play. We really need to be one-on-one. When Marsha speaks to another female vet, I can't speak the same because they actually can connect on different things. But me as a nuclear electrician, I can speak to another nuke. I can speak to another Navy person. That connection. Then sustainability. Sustainability means that connecting with the local church, connecting to the local business, connecting to people in the community. We have so much funding pushed towards us getting jobs and getting into housing. We're not focusing on the mental sustainability as well as the internal things that they were dealing with. I'm a 100% disabled veteran. You can't see it on the outside, but on the inside, I'm hurting. And so I have to deal with that on a daily basis. And so my organization called Veterans Homefront, which I have the shirt on, logo itself, we help homeless and hurting veterans throughout Hampton Roads and beyond. But the point is, what is the process to help them? We need the community to start working with these homeless organizations and the government agencies and talking about what the process is. It's the point of knowing what phone numbers it is, what connection to what organizations, what funding, what landlords are willing to house those veterans, and what organizations are willing to hire them. It's a whole process, and the government has that process. We just have to get to the point of telling everyone, the single mom at home, the person, the Panera Bread manager who's a veteran, and telling the everyday person, how can they help? How can they supplement into the process and be a part of ensuring that they get housed? Also, since 22 veterans commit suicide a day, help them to stay alive long enough to get connected to someone that will keep them alive long enough to make sure that they have their whole family stay in our world. So that's my drop the mic now.
Okay, Antoine. Deep.
Antoine was preaching there for a second.
That was deep.
I'm sorry.
I may have to start calling this the Salute to Antoine show and just turn this over. That was pretty deep. I'm very impressed. If I had a mic right here I could drop, I would have dropped it for you. So give me the name of your nonprofit again. Was it Veterans Homefront? Did I get that right?
Yep, Veterans Homefront on Facebook, Instagram, everything like that.
Veterans
Looking for volunteers and board members and everything. Definitely.
There you go.
And we want to connect the
dots.
dots.
Shout out. I had to give you a shout out. So Veterans Homefront, I appreciate it. And you are one of those superheroes, my friend. I appreciate you. And I think it takes us back to the point that Charles was talking about self-identification. If we start allowing that to happen, we can talk about who we are, where we are, and then people can find us and we can help them. So we just have to get more people to self-identify. It's a passion of mine. We've got to figure that out. So thank you for that, Antoine. So let me shift gears a minute and talk to you, Bob, and let's talk a little bit about, which is another subject near and dear to my heart, which is really about inclusion for a moment. And Antoine gave us a great segue into that because Antoine's also a disabled vet, and so are you, Bob. So thank you both for sharing this. But can you talk about your experiences working in a large corporation, and what are some of the pertinent factors that employers and employees need to be aware of when they're working in an environment to make it more inclusive with individuals who may have a disability that's physical and visible or not?
I think for most people, it's a personal thing. I mean, like for me, I'll be honest with you, this should be no surprise by now. It wasn't something I even pursued until a couple years ago. It took a disabled vet to sit down and talk to me. He happened to notice the way I was standing and he knew something was going on. And we got in a conversation and I just haven't told him about an injury I had from the military. And he asked me, he's like, you get a disability for that? I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm fine. He's like, well, no, not really. I mean, look, you just almost fell there. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And so, I mean, to be honest with you, like I said, it took a senior chief from the Navy Reserves, and we sat down and had a long conversation about it. And to be honest with you, I didn't identify through Cox until just recently. Once again, Julie Otis and I were having a conversation. And, you know, there's a stigma, at least for me, I think it goes with it. And I'm sure Mr. Hines, you know, could probably validate some of that. You know, there's kind of, I don't know, I felt there was a stigma that went with that. You know, because I get friends of mine that look at me and they're like, you know, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, well, you know, do you really want to get into this conversation? And so, you know, for me, I you know, I don't know. I guess it was that fear, that stigma that went with that. And I just, you know, for the longest time, like I said, I didn't even pursue that avenue. So.
Understand. Well, thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to see if Antoine, I'm going to pull an audible here. Do you want to add anything to that?
I think the whole point too is that I don't know. I think he said it. I mean, it's simple to the point because there's a lot of stuff you don't let out and you don't want to tell everyone because it is so much. You know, like I said, you know, I was on a submarine, so I can still, well, a lot of people dealing with PTSD, not just veterans, but, you know, domestic violence and different, a lot of different people in the world, but the PTSD and remembering things in the war time. I was there 9/11, ready to help push the button, you know, and remember those things And when you go to class, when you come into the military, I went to Old Dominion University, going to class, and to flash back at any point in time of the day and remember, and to hold yourself, not to try to protect someone or do something else, to learn those skills, it's something that everyone can't relate to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Bob and Antoine, thank you very much for sharing that because I know that's personal and I really appreciate that. And we have to understand that everybody who has a disability, sometimes it shows like Bob, sometimes it doesn't like Antoine, sometimes it doesn't like mine. It just doesn't. We all have them, but you don't see them all the time. All right. Thank you for that. So Charles, let me see if I can throw you a curveball. So, because I know you play basketball, but I heard you can't hit a baseball. So I'm going to try this curveball. Um, so not only are you a veteran, Charles, which I already know that, but you're also a proud parent of someone in the military that you don't really talk about a lot. So I'm going to have you kind of bring that up. And as you do that, I want you to kind of share any lessons you've learned that we can offer to youth or to parents who are considering or their kids are considering joining the military. So what do you got, Charles?
Yeah, it's ironic you said that. My soldier called me during the middle of this conference. She's currently stationed in Kuwait with about an 8-hour time difference. So she calls me at lunch sometimes just to check in with her old man. But what I would talk about is really the benefits, right? Number one, something near and dear to myself is really physical fitness. I lead with that because we're in a community now where our youth, people our age and older, we want to be a more physically fit country, more physically fit individuals. And so I think that's just off the bat. If you think about what the military provides, you talk to your child, someone's interested, you talk about the commitment to physical fitness. And then I think the next commitment is really around education and training. For those of you who don't know, the U.S. Army has the largest college scholarship fund in the United States. It's about $250 million a year. They have more individuals on scholarship to get education and than any other college or program in this great country. And so you get an opportunity to further yourself from an education perspective and get an opportunity to go into the military as an officer. So for my daughter, she had an opportunity to go to the college that she dreamed about going to on a full scholarship with the Army ROTC. And then the best part about it is really about, having a role in a job once you complete your education. So my daughter was fortunate enough when she graduated college to not have to worry about going out looking for a job. She was able to get a job in her major, so logistics, and she's now a logistician in the United States Army. And so I think as a parent, you think about what are the things that are important to a young person is really, we've all, one thing about everybody on this call, we've probably all been 18 before, we all been 21 and really don't have an idea what we want to do. And that's something that the military can do, can help give you some guidance and give you a good foundation of how to be a young adult in our country, in our community. And that's one of the things that's great about the military. And then I'll talk about from an enlisted perspective. You have those individuals that think they want to do one thing, think they want to do another, but really aren't really sure where they want to be in life, or they need some direction. The opportunity in the United States military at a 2-year reserve, 4-year, that initial enlistment, that initial commitment, it provides you really an idea of what you do, or most importantly, what you don't want to do for the rest of your life. And just the benefits that are unleashed to you, from education to housing, to just organizations that you can be a part of, and really an opportunity to be taken care of for the rest of your life through that commitment of through the military, something that's just transitional. And so we often talk about that, and I think those are the benefits that parents can see as they talk to their children. So, most importantly, I talk about the physical fitness, which I think is important, getting that regiment down early in your life, to education and training, either it be at the officer level where you get the chance to get your education, or at the enlisted level where you get that training. And training is really important as we all try to make ourselves better for the workforce. As I shout out Antoine, some of the things he did in the military, though he chose not to take a career in the nuclear field, he can tell you, as many people can tell you, there's a lot of opportunity in that space. And just really, I think about what Marsha's talked about with wellness and nutrition and her time as a nurse and seeing things that veterans need. And even Bob, I'm sure as a data access engineer, he's gotten some discipline from the military to really point him in that direction. So those are some of the great traits that I talk about. I would encourage parents to be aware of as they talk to their youth about pursuing an opportunity in the military.
Awesome. Thank you, Charles. So first and foremost, I think you missed your calling. You absolutely should have been a recruiter, without a doubt, because you did a phenomenal job with that. So we may have to get that recorded. The second thing is, before we quickly transition from you, you didn't shout out your daughter's name, and I need you to say that so that we can get that shout out on the video.
All right. First Lieutenant Charlicia Shanae Davis. She's a part of the artillery unit stationed in Kuwait, and she's been in the Army for 2 years and making me proud every day.
Awesome. She truly chose the right branch. I'm very proud of her. Awesome. Awesome. All right. Thank you, Charles. So Antoine, Charles gave you a segue, so I'm going to go ahead and put a bow on it from you because we've got about 5 good minutes left, and I'm going to try to squeeze in the question between you and Marsha in those last 5 minutes. So Antoine, quickly, if you can kind of tell me, you've had a very successful career after the military. So what has helped you transition so effectively from the military to civilian life in the way that you've done it? Because you've done it well. So give us some clues. In about a couple minutes, give us some clues.
Who are you talking about? Me? I didn't wear?
Yes.
So,
of course I'm talking about you.
well, for me personally, I took all my military background and all the degrees and going to school from the military and everything I learned, and I placed it in the community. Getting out, even though I was going through a divorce, going through suicidal thoughts, depression, and everything, I still had that background to give back to the community. I started off with volunteering. I started looking at national organizations volunteering. I took that whole point of that servant mindset and heart and put it in the community, and I was able to teach others, which got me to the point of getting in the right rooms and working with the cities. And knowing that I had this expertise, had this project management background and the managerial background, I was able to work with social services and the police department and the VA hospital and strategize plans together and bring my brothers and sisters together to do this together, because we knew we had a fight, not just while we were in the military, but while we're in the community. We had a fight to keep other veterans alive, as well as people in the community and our kids on the long haul.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that, Antoine. That's cool. By the way, I need one of those shirts. I need it in 2X though. Don't be sending me no Smurf shirt. I need it 2X. All right. Marsha, let's transition to you a little bit and kind of put a bow on this whole thing. You're a veteran, you're a female. Can you discuss the faced in the military as a female veteran that you feel helped prepared you for that next career? What did you learn there that helped prepare you?
Okay, so I am going to answer the question by telling you a brief story. Okay, so as I was an E4 at the time, and I took the advancement exam for E5. I was an engineman, and after the exam came out, not only did I pass, but I was also advanced. Unfortunately, the two male in the shop did not. So the senior chief pulls me aside and says to me, the only reason you were advanced to E5 was because you're female. I said, no. The only reason I advanced is because I studied. My husband, at the time he was a boiler tech, he spent countless amount of times studying with me. He taught me how to draw the steam cycle. And he said to me, right before you go into the exam, make sure you draw the steam cycle. And most of the questions in the exam is going to be based on that. So if you have the visual, refer to it and you'll be able to answer the questions and you would do just fine. And that's exactly what I did. So that really put some fire in me. And I said, absolutely not. First of all, I was in a rate that I really didn't care for. So that really inspired me to really go for what I actually wanted to do, was to go into the medical field. So I made sure that I pulled my weight, I worked hard, and as a reward, I was allowed to move into the medical department. And from there on, everything else was history. I was able to apply for the medical commissioning program, went to Norfolk State University, got my bachelor's degree in nursing, spent 10 years as a commissioned officer. And at the end of my 20 years, I said, sayonara.
Awesome. Great story. Thank you for sharing. All right. So I've got 3 minutes to put a a whole package together to close this out. So we're gonna go on a rapid fire round right here. I'm gonna ask you a question, and you're gonna answer it with 2 words or less. And I'm gonna ask you probably about 3 questions, and everybody chime in. And I'm just gonna start the left side of my screen and go all the way across. Marsha, I'm starting with you because you're on the screen first. So when when you're making a decision, now that you made the transition from the military to the civilian world, when you're making a decision, what in the military has helped you drive the decisions you're making now today? What skill set?
Hmm. Determination.
Love it. Determination. Awesome. Thank you. Bob,
I would say drive.
drive. Love it. Antoine,
Momentum.
momentum. Love that. Charles,
Adaptability.
adaptability. That adaptable and flexibility. That's a beautiful thing. All right. I love those. All right. So let me ask you another one. What is the one thing you wish you knew going into the military? The one thing you wish you knew. Antoine, you're still on my screen. You're starting first.
Finance, really. Financial stability. I should have saved my bonuses.
I'm going to echo that one. Finance. All right. We're going to go to you, Charles.
Friendship, camaraderie.
The importance of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I get it. Marsha.
Didn't know that I was going to become an expert at cleaning.
Say it again.
At cleaning.
Janitor.
That's all we
At
did in the
cleaning?
Navy.
Yes.
Yes, field day.
Yeah, I
That's
don't think any of us knew that or how to make a bed correctly until we got in there. All right. Okay, Bob, what you got?
Some of the options that are available, like the officer candidates programs. There are a lot of options available if you don't know going in that you find out after you got in. It's like, well, I wish I'd have known about that when I enlisted.
Awesome. I get that. Makes all the sense in the world because that's not something you get on the front end. But if Charles becomes a recruiter, he can fix that for all of us. Maybe give us that insight. All right, I got one more for you. So what has inspired each one of you to reach the success that you've reached now? What has inspired you? What's inside your core that makes you want to do what you do? We'll start with you, Bob. You're on the screen.
My grandfather, to be honest with you.
Ain't nothing wrong with that, my friend. Nothing wrong with that at all. Charles.
As quickly as possible, those yellow footprints when I got to Paris Island, and discipline.
Understood. Antoine.
My daughter, 15 years old, I want her to join the military or not, but I want her to know what I did and what other people are doing, and that the veterans that come behind me, that those kids can know where to go and how to get help.
Sounds like a girl dad if I ever heard one right there, my friend. I'm one, so one knows one. All right. Marsha.
For me, it was my dad. And that was inadvertently, I followed in his footsteps until years later realized what I've done. My dad also came to America as a teenager. He joined the military. He joined the Army, unfortunately.
Excuse me?
He got his degree, got commissioned, and then after a while, you sat back and said, "Oh my goodness, I did exactly what he did. It wasn't planned, but it happened that way." So I definitely attribute that to him.
Sounds like a girl dad's daughter if I ever heard one there too. Got it. All right. Well, thank you all of you, my distinguished panel. You guys have been phenomenal. I really appreciate everything you guys have done. The answers have been great. I'm going to turn this back on to Lakeisha. And Lakeisha, you're going to actually close this out. So thank you very much, everyone. Lakeisha?
Thank you, JD. Wow, what a great event. We thank our moderator, JD, our panelists, Bob, Marsha, Antoine, and Charles. You all shared some of the most innermost feelings and experiences, and you didn't have to, but you did. Our veterans need us, and we need them. The skills that veterans have based on their military experience go unmatched. Please encourage our veterans and yourself, if it applies, to self-identify. It is important because it helps organizations ensure you have the resources you need. Thank you for your service of our men and women who have served. There are links in the chat for organizations of these esteemed participants, so check it out. In addition, Namic, Virginia has its next scheduled event on December 9th, where we're going to partner with the Namic Capital Area chapter to host a virtual holiday party. You don't want to miss it. So mark your calendars and stay tuned. The best way to keep up with our events is to follow us on our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And also don't forget, we have a YouTube page. We look forward to seeing you at our future event. Be well and be safe.
Great job, Lakeisha. Thank you. Great job, panel. You guys are phenomenal. Antoine, don't forget my shirt, man. Don't forget my shirt.